Hi, everyone. It's really wonderful to see you all here today. We're going to be talking about the agency and client relationship in a world with AI, as AI becomes more of a feature in our creative processes. So firstly, if you haven't met me before, I'm Emma. I'm co-founder of Spark, and I'm really delighted to be your host today. Just a tiny bit about Spark. So at Spark, we sit at the intersection of creativity and AI. We're a team of creatives and AI specialists, and we partner with creative agencies and brands to unlock the transformative power of AI. And we kind of do this in two ways. Firstly, we help leadership teams identify the opportunities for AI to drive real value within their businesses. And secondly, we also provide hands-on training that helps leaders and creatives and strategists to use AI within their processes. I think we're all about AI not being about replacing people. It's about really bringing new creative possibilities and innovation and opportunities for expression. So we are really excited about what we can do. So today we are I'm really excited to be joined by Luke and Ben. They've really got the perfect experience for our discussion about the agency and client relationship in a world with AI. So first up, Luke, welcome. Luke's co-founder of the award-winning branding agency United Us. He's led the team for 12 years, and you partner with clients like Lego, Google, Aon. Is that so? I never know how to say Aon. Is that right? Yeah. And the London Irish Rugby Club. So United Us champions working at the intersection of creativity and commerce with its clients. And they've really embraced being AI forward, taking a holistic approach to that, really beyond using new tools. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about that. So beyond agency work, Luke and his co-founders are also creative entrepreneurs and investors with businesses and brands, and particularly in sports and legal and also commercial property. So you've got a really wide-ranging experience. And also, Luke, I think you're a photographer as well. I don't quite know how you fit that in. We're bringing up a young family too. It's pretty impressive.
Just make it, right? Oh, that's why you need AI to find some time, right?
Totally. And Ben, really welcome. It's great to have you here. So Ben, you have been at the forefront of sort of each of the digital transitions, really starting with mobile transition in creative and marketing, where you founded a mobile agency. And I think that has really many parallels with the AI transition now. So it'd be really interesting to talk about that through this discussion.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you've led teams across several of WPP's media and data agencies as well, and you now run your own consulting business, advising clients on the intersection of digital data and AI. You're also one of Spark's advisors, which is brilliant. So fab. So we're going to talk, I think, for around half an hour to 40 minutes. We'll just see how the conversation goes and where it takes us. Please submit any questions in the chat during the session, and we'll get back to you on the chat. So I reckon I should stop talking so much and ask some questions now. So let's make a start. Well, let's just start really generally about reflecting on how AI has changed the landscape of the client and agency relationship over the last couple of years. As each of you, like, what are the most significant changes that you've seen? Ben or Luke, who would like to start?
Go on, Ben. Kick us off.
Dive in, make a start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I think from my perspective, and you know, I'll be talking about it from the big agency perspective in terms of sort of the big networked agencies. You know, there's in the last couple of years, there's definitely been a general acknowledgement that, you know, time-based fee models are going to be severely challenged and impacted by AI, because if you can do things faster, then there needs to be a conversation about, you know, how that's priced. However, you know, a full swing to, let's say, an outcome model or a delivery model is very hard. And while it feels like the right thing to do, procurement teams aren't ready on the client side. And so, you know, one of the big shifts that we're starting to see is some sort of hybrid pricing coming in, whereby, you know, you've got some sort of outcome-based capability in the pricing, but you've also got obviously a fee-based pricing, because you've got to retain a team as well. So it's a really difficult balance to get right. So that's one big shift that I'm seeing. And the other big shift, of course, is around what I would call shared services and platforms in the big opcos and the big holdcos. And that's really been a big shift over the last 1 or 2 years. You've got Choreograph and Nexus over at WPP. I think Publicis are building their Growth OS and their core AI platforms. And really what this is doing is this is preparing the agency brands to be able to focus much more on client strategy, client engagement, opportunity development, understanding those opportunities and spending time with clients to develop those things, while the sort of more consistent processes, the data, the AI, which is all structured, is enabled through a common platform. And this is something that was a big problem for the big holdcos and the big agencies, because every brand or agency brand was doing it very differently. And so therefore, a lot of cost was being wasted, but also, they just didn't have the efficiencies that could be done across multiple brands. So I'd say those are the two big shifts that we're seeing, certainly on the big agency side. But I'll hand over to Luke to give us a bit of an inkling on what's happening on maybe smaller agencies.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm fascinated to hear about the bigger agencies and what they're doing with AI and the challenges that they're having. And I think as a sort of smaller agency, the conversations are slightly different with AI. Clients are very unaware still. I would say like the mass of the market is still unaware of AI with the smaller organizations. We work with obviously global brands and smaller medium businesses as well, but AI isn't a thing that they tend to approach creative agencies of our scale for. And I think that's probably because like agencies at our size, people have to wear many hats, right? In the larger networked agencies, you've got people who are focused on like hyper focused on small things and potentially have AI teams. In a smaller agency, that's very unlikely to have an AI team. Therefore, your team members or my team members we are utilizing AI across the board, across every part of the business. So it's a much more 360 engagement with AI for us. It's a much more holistic usage. But clients are, I would say in the main, still very uneducated around AI. I think most people are. It's an incredibly fast moving environment. That's one of the challenges and also the exciting opportunities with AI is the speed at which it's evolving. And now Ben can obviously talk to the sentiment of the digital transformation that we had, a decade or so ago, and the likelihood of how much it feels like that. But I think at the moment it's a quick transition. One of the things I think that is interesting though is that as an industry, we are always in a bit of an arms race. Like creative industry is always an arms race of technology, of ideas, of ambition, of opportunity. So we don't see AI as a detractor to that, just the next phase of that continual evolution. And people who work in the creative industries need to be magpies and chameleons and curious. Right? I think you talked about that in a previous podcast, the curiosity that comes with AI. You need to be curious, and AI is the next curiosity enabler for us as an organization to work with our clients to go, well, these things are possible, these ideas can be realized, these ambitions are within reach. So the transition on a day-to-day basis, we're not seeing many of our clients sort of actively talking to us about it. We have had in the last year clients in initial conversations ask us what our AI policies are. And we already have those in place. We're already ahead of the curve on those things. So we were very happy to talk to that. But clients are going to start those conversations, I think, they're going to be much more direct in 2025, 26 of what are your AI policies. And agencies need to be ready for that. They need to be ready with an understanding of the controls, the rigor around their usage, where they're using it, where they're not, why they're using it. You can't just say, oh yeah, we use it. Like that's not of benefit. And it's not going to get you through the door with particularly the larger clients who themselves either have AI policies or they've got AI specialists in-house who want to test the requirements that a good relationship with them. So there's going to be there's a creative side to this, but there's also a structural and a commercial side that you're going to need to understand the world of AI just to progress conversations with clients who are progressively forward thinking.
Yeah, there's always like
those clients well, Luke, sorry. You know,
Yeah.
because if you don't have that to hand and you're not prepared, you won't keep those clients.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Ben. Yeah, and there's almost like just that, I guess, governance side around it, that you got it like, you know, with you got all that lined up. Yeah, to keep. Yeah, absolutely. And do you find, Luke, that when clients have been talking, the few clients that have been talking to you about it, is it the larger, the sort of more corporate brands that are asking you about AI policy, your AI policy, or is it going to be any size of client?
No, it
Is
could
that
be,
the
yeah,
main
it could be any size client. I think, you know, for us as an organization, we're looking to always create relationships with people who have the right mindset, who want to challenge the status quo, who want to think big, and they tend to be the people that want to ask those kinds of questions as well, because they're also going, what's the future? How do we enable ourselves as an organization? So there's a synergy between us, the questions, and the people that we want to work with, which, you know, and the people that are maybe who are saying to us, I've not even thought about AI, I'm not even engaging with AI, I don't even want to look under the hood. Those are organizations that are probably not going to be a good fit for us as a studio, because we're going to be too challenging for that relationship. That's not to say that they're not great businesses, but what we're trying to do is to progress people and to do something that's unique and different, and that requires a certain mentality. So yeah, we're seeing those questions coming, and I really like those questions. When someone asks, how are you using this? Why are you using it? It shows a level of interest, right? A level of intellectual decision around creativity to go, actually, I know you guys are doing the brand, but I'm fascinated about how that process works and why it works and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, it pushes one another to do more and better, and you know that, and innovate more when you're getting those questions. I guess.
We're all learning. Right? Like, I think that's the other thing, is like people are nervous about opening conversations about AI, but ultimately, like, we're all learning about it. Like, it's moving so quickly. I'm not an AI specialist, you know, but we are doing what we can to learn as much as we can, and that opens creative doors, but also to protect ourselves, you know, to protect ourselves, our creativity, our team from the future that's coming, which is going to be quite different. You know, in an agency perspective, the agency structures will look very different within 3 to 5 years. So it's a case of, if we're not thinking about it now, you're reacting, not being proactive. And that, for me and my partners, is we don't ever want to be in a reactionary position. We always want to be proactive in what we're doing, and we have to be across this kind of conversation.
Yeah, it wouldn't be comfortable to be in that reactive position at all. And I definitely want to get onto that sort of later in our conversation, like what structures might look like. But firstly, I just would like to just reflect on like how this AI digital transition has parallels to previous transitions as well. And Ben, you've got great experience in this from mobile and web, mobile, and you know, and particularly mobile, being at the forefront of that and being a really early in that game, and seeing that transition go through. Do you have any reflections on how AI is similar or not?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's very similar. Is the sort of the headline. You know, what I'm seeing now is exactly the sort of same playbook that I saw about 10 years ago in the big agencies when we took a mobile business into a big creative agency in WPP. You know, the first thing that's happening is the leaders bring in these experts, these capabilities, because the clients are demanding them. If they're not bringing them in, they don't look like they're up to pace. And so initially that's great, but it sort of papers over the cracks, it papers over the lack of knowledge, and more importantly, it's not sort of across the whole agency, right? It's just in tiny little pockets. And so very quickly you run out of time and ability to be able to service all the clients who are asking for more digital stuff or asking for mobile stuff. And the same will happen with AI. I think the other observation is that these things do always take a bit longer than we expect. I mean, there's no doubt that this transition is probably going to be a bit faster than the digital marketing one. That one, people thought that one was going to happen in 2 or 3 years. It probably took 10 years before the whole shift and before digital became the dominant play in agencies. And then when that shift happens, you then basically get a situation where the leaders who were previously there, the incumbents, get replaced by digital first or digital savvy leaders. And so I think, you know, we're going to see the same sort of play going on here. We can see those leaders that fully understand AI, that are using it themselves and making that message all the way through the agencies. They're the ones that are going to stay, or they're the ones that are going to be starting to get those sort of new jobs and take the agency into that new position. So, really for me, there is a lot of parallels. I think the big unknown is how long will this transition take? Because I think the real difference between this transition and previous transitions is the fact that this particular general purpose technology is just so accessible. And the fact that almost anybody can use it in the agency for almost any task means that we might see it adopt much, much quicker than, say, something like the digital marketing piece.
Interesting. And that's, Luke, do you have any different perspectives, like from a independent agency point of view? Because I mean, Ben's point about sort of having the sort of from a kind of networked agency, having that pocket of experts and not being able to get across all the clients, like you're saying, it's very different in a smaller agency where you're all you've got multiple hats that you wear and you all need to become AI experts.
Well, in a smaller agency, obviously you have the opportunity to enable all of your staff at an equal kind of pace. For us, we are spending a fair bit of time training our team on AI, looking at AI tools, being very particular about our choice of AI tools. That's one of the things out there at the moment, which I think could be a slight derailer of the progress. I think absolutely agree with everything Ben said, but there's such a plethora of tools available now that organizations can quite easily have an absolute minefield of software on the go. It's like a noodle soup of who's using what and all those things if you don't control what you're doing as a studio. So for us, we're being very particular on, we're reviewing, assessing, and then making policies internally to go, okay, this is what we're using for this reason and why and how, and then working with our team to find best practice for those things, right? One of the challenges / opportunities with AI is it does enable efficiency savings, but only if it's actually considered in a process from a studio perspective. If one person silo, that doesn't necessarily make efficiency savings. It can create complexity or, at worst, security issues. So in a smaller studio, you have the ability to be more democratic in that conversation. We're having different members of the team give talks about what they're doing with AI. We're allowing team members to play and sandbox opportunities within the studio and then talk to the business about the benefits that they found with those, but also the challenges, or where actually, this seemed great, but actually after a little bit of work was a bit of a minefield for us and was causing us headaches, So I think that transition is going to be quicker than the digital transformation, like Ben says. But I think there's also going to be some challenges of employees potentially moving between agencies and having their own preferences of ways of working with AI that doesn't necessarily gel with other businesses. I think those are going to be a challenge for that move, like career path changes, and onboarding. And I don't know that Ben will be able to say better, but maybe the networked agencies are going to have some challenges with that. If different parts of their businesses are not aligned on how they're using AI, it's not so easy to move people across.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, you make an excellent point, Luke, which is that if you don't have a consistent process, it's the same in any business, right? Whether you're running the studio or whether you're running a media campaign or anything. If you don't have a consistent process where the consistent tools are helping improve that process, then actually suddenly the explosion of these capabilities and tools can actually cause you more problems than good, right? So I can see a scenario very quickly where people are using things that are not legally signed off, that are basically not part of the process, give an output that doesn't then go straight to the input of the next part of the process, and suddenly you're trying to pick up the pieces all over the place, trying to work out what on earth has gone on. And what's gone on is basically this huge explosion of AI technology and people trying different things, which is great, but it needs to be contained. So, I mean, that for me is the biggest danger of this piece. Of course, we want people to experiment. And I think Luke, really highlights the point about sandboxes, experimenting, give those people with the curious minds, give them the sandbox and enable them to come and make recommendations about how that will improve the process, not just how cool it is. Because it's great that it's cool, but it's got to be able to actually deliver some sort of business value and some sort of, you know, business enterprise capability.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. You know, at the outset, Emma, you talked about our message is very much working at the intersection of creativity and commerce, and AI is only as beneficial if it's creating some benefit to the end user and the end client. If it's not, and it just creates something that looks lovely, that's just design vanity. That's lovely for a designer conversation, but it's not going to progress you as an organization. And yeah, there has to be benefit there. We're very focused on that with our clients, so talking to them in a commercial sense of actually utilizing this kind of tool has this kind of commercial benefit or efficiency benefit. It's not just makes a cool image, right? Like no one cares about that from a client perspective, really. Like they do at a top level, but when you get into the weeds of, are we going to do more work? Are we going to do more campaigns? Are we going to do? It has to show some return on its investment.
Yeah, totally. Like it either has to do more for the same cost, I guess, or it needs to do new creative things that has a greater impact. What you were saying, Luke, about the noodle soup of subscriptions and the AI tools, that's something that I hear a lot from clients, and it's also just, I think, paired with that is like the subscription overload. It can also, as well as like losing sort of control of what's being used in your business, it's also just that number of subscriptions we hear a lot. And I think at this particular point in time, there's so many new tools coming on the market and that are very similar, and you kind of want to try this one and try that one. It's so important to kind of create a framework around that, like you're doing, and, you know, test and learn and implement the ones that you've proven that bring you value. And we're also seeing that a lot, the kind of you were talking about, kind of often you get a single expert in a team that's really good at one specific thing, and it's not that everyone knows how to use AI. It's not interwoven into processes, so you're not necessarily getting the value from it, but you've got sort of point people who are brilliant at certain things. And yeah, I totally agree about, you know, the value of it comes from really integrating it across the board. But anyway, I want to bring us back to clients a bit more, because we could spend the whole time talking about just sort of internal integration and operations, because that's so interesting as well. Before, we were talking about trust in the relationship between agency and client, and how and the importance of that trust and how it enables you to open sort of the door to using AI in client work, and like with having that foundation of trust. I guess it made me wonder what are clients really concerned about, like that requires a kind of strong relationship and really good trust to move forward with AI. No, I think, Ben, you had some really interesting thoughts about this earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think that nothing really has changed over many, many years, in the sense that clients, from my experience, really care about three main things. First of all, it's the effectiveness of the work, right? And I would put in there innovation, the PR of the work, being made famous for the work, and of course, most importantly, as I said, the effectiveness, the sales, the results of that work, right? That for me is usually the primary concern. Then comes efficiency. So in there is the value for money of the work that's delivered, both the real value for work, but also the perceived value for work. In other words, you know, what the agency is perceived to be doing versus what it's actually delivering. And then the third thing, of course, and very important to some, less important to others, is the legal and compliance piece, right? In other words, I don't mind doing new things. I like to do all this stuff, but let's not get sued in the process for doing it, right? So let's make sure that everything we do is exactly legal and compliant. And so these areas, I think, are interesting because all three of them are being impacted by AI. And so the agencies really need to manage these very, very carefully and openly with clients. And the best outcomes that I've always seen have always been when the client and the agency go on that journey together towards that new path. So what they're basically doing is they're saying, look, I'm really concerned about this, or I really want to understand how we improve effectiveness. The conversation that I'm seeing and hearing a lot at the moment is that one around efficiency, which is, look, I don't want to cut your bills in half, but I do want to understand and have an open conversation about what we're going to do better so that I can reuse some of these resources elsewhere, right? And if that's an open and honest open and honest conversation with the client, the outcomes are usually very, very good. But if one party comes to the other in a slightly untransparent way, so for example, if the agency decides to reduce the cost of the account and not tell the client, or if the client comes to the agency and says, look, I need you to reduce headcount by 50% in January 25, right? Those sorts of ways of working don't ever bring good results. So I think, as I said, AI impacts all three of those areas. They're the areas that certainly I saw on the big network agencies, but I'd love to hear what Luke's seeing at a smaller level.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating to hear, because it's like such a different model, obviously, that those bigger network agencies run than someone like us. For us, the trust is quite simple. It's just about transparency, as much as we can provide at all times. The more transparent we are, the more we can build a relationship that people understand what they're paying for, the skills that they're getting for that work, and ultimately seeing the value that is obtained from that piece of work. Because we don't tend to work on the account sort of structure, long form account, year after year. We're working with organizations through a rebrand as a branding specific agency in our example. Trust is absolutely imperative at all stages of our project already. To deliver a great rebrand, you have to have the trust of the senior team, the board, the exec, the entire business, if you absolutely can. So we have a very close working relationship with our clients in that regard. They see myself and my partners from the initial conversations to the very final launch meetings, to the output, to the ongoing. So we build up a very human relationship. It's a very human, one-to-one, consistent relationship. And therefore, we're able to open the door to new technologies like AI quite comfortably, because we have a level of built trust, human interaction. And the client understands that the team, and my excellent team, they have already displayed all of the skills and knowledge and expertise in the room. They understand that. So when we're adding a conversation of AI to a portion of a project, which tends to be only at the implementation phase of work, we don't use AI in the strategic phase of work. That's completely ring fenced for human work and human interaction. So completely ring fenced there. AI is instigated in the implementation side. And that's obviously where smaller agencies or clients, they struggle to have the impact a larger client that's working with, someone like a WPP has the commercial power to activate a brand at that level. Smaller brands, when I say smaller, they've still got significant budget and scale and size, but they don't have the commercial appetite for campaign after campaign, and the brand has to do a different level of creative lifting. So in that phase of work, we already have the trust of the client. We've built up a long relationship with them. We're able to open the door to AI in the way of, okay, we're delivering this, you're delivering that. This just turbocharges a portion of what you want to do and gives you the tools to do that. We had a recent brand that we launched for a food charity called Prepped. It was covered on Design Week and Creative Boom and so on 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think I posted it on Spark's LinkedIn if anyone hasn't seen it, but it'd be easier to find it on Design Week as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But in that scenario, the charity obviously don't have money. We pretty much did the project pro bono. They don't have an activation budget. Using AI enabled us to give them a level of reach that they would never have had before, because we're able to use our creative idea that was generated by the team, ring-fenced from digital environments. It was absolutely our own idea, but we were able to then feed that into the tools to go, okay, we want to realize this through AI-enabled tools. And in that instance, we were using Adobe Firefly to really turbocharge the output. And it's been hugely successful to them. It's opened doors that I spoke to the boss there yesterday, and they said that people who had ignored them in the past are now engaging with them in conversation. And that's because of the ability to enable their brand to come to life. And it would be, from our perspective, it would be wrong of us to withhold the use of AI from them, because actually by using AI, we are helping the charity to deliver on its goals for young people. So there's benefit to the consumers, there's benefit to the wider public and community for using it. Now, obviously, we understand that with all of the conversation around AI, there is positives and there is people who are detractors of that and people who are unhappy about our use with the AI in that scenario. But we believe that we're using it in the right way for the right purposes in that particular project is a good example. So that was a case of we built that trust, and then we're able to show the client, right, this great opportunity here, have fun, we can play with this in a safe environment. So I think you can do that. You can do that quite comfortably if you feel like you have the relationships to do so, and also that your client, really importantly, you feel the client is ready for that conversation. Obviously, that's something that only a positive client relationship and understanding enables you to do. Ben mentioned as well on the account directors in the large organizations, there'll be accounts, I'm sure, Ben, that you're like, this client is really up for this kind of stuff and this client isn't, and understanding who you're using. And that's no different than any technology in the past, right? Whoever you've engaged with, there's always front runners, and then there's people who are a little bit more reserved and want to see how it sits, and then we'll catch up. That we're in that scenario right now with AI.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point, Luke. And certainly, again, one of those sort of parallels with the digital transition is in these scenarios, you start to see two different types of clients. You know, you sort of see the clients that will just follow, make sure everything's being done properly, and want to take advantage of those opportunities when they come. But then you have some clients who are led by, or have the marketing relationship that are led by somebody who wants to drive that forward within their organization. They want to drive forward digital, and the same person wants to drive forward AI. And so what they're doing is they're literally on the heels of the agency. What can you do? What are we doing differently? You know, how can I do something innovative? How can I get some more PR for this? Because it's a personal branding thing as well, right? And so, you will see it coming from those two different places, probably top down from the agency in some cases, but definitely bottom up from the clients in some cases.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree with that, Ben. And I think on that point, I think the interesting thing is that AI will be a leveler for people within organizations to be creating really high quality pieces of work, whether they're on brand, whether that's a different conversation, but they will have the toolkits to, we've all been there as an agency. You create a great brand or a great campaign, and then the client goes and creates something. You're like, what have you done? Like, that's not on brand. Like, it's complete. So imagine that, but with AI tools, right? It's going to be absolutely carnage. But that you need to address that. You need to get into that room to have that conversation. And you can either be trying to shut that down, or like us, you can be like, be positive of that conversation and go, actually, education is what's required. As an agency, our opportunity is to educate the client on the positive tools, but provide guide rails for them to use tools themselves. It's no different than clients, having the access to PowerPoint and all those sorts of things and really doing some crazy stuff with their brand. It's exactly the same, just the tool is much more powerful. So the agencies have to work on, which we're doing, is working with internal team members to go, okay, this is going to be a challenge for your brand. This will be difficult. How do we give you and the tools that you're using guidance and ring fences to protect your brand? AI is going to have a lot of brand protection built into it. Yeah. I know, again, at the larger agencies that Ben's at, the more progressive organizations who have the financial power are looking at ways to protect their brand with AI. Everyone needs to transition their mentality to that and go, how do we utilize this to look after and care for what we've created over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think a few months ago, I was talking to, I think it was Shell, and they were talking about how they are using an AI tool in order to safeguard their brand. So they're using an AI tool to check all their creative that is used using AI. You see what I mean? So AI is checking AI internally. So it's interesting how with some of the bigger brands, they might be using it in that way as well. I couldn't agree more about that whole conversation. And I think your example with the charity, is it Prepped? Prep, yeah. They like the ability to have that amazing creative output on that wouldn't have been achievable before must be so satisfying for both your team and so much more satisfying for your team and the client to be able to bring that to them. It's it's very exciting. So I wanted to just ask a bit about how agencies are openly promoting their adoption of AI or not, I guess, and whether they're finding this resonates with clients. Like WPP, have WPP Brain that's being promoted a lot. And Luke, I'd be really interested to know in how much you are as an agency open, like promoting that you're very AI forward, or whether it's just on a client by client sort of basis as to where it's appropriate. So I guess, again, I think what's coming out of this conversation is the very different circumstances of networks and independent agencies in this transition. But and it probably would be two different perspectives again. I don't know. Ben, do you want to go first with, I know
Sure.
you're,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is that this stuff develops with a good client agency relationship. So, the brain stuff that you were talking about, a great example of that is the brand brain that WPP did. They did that with Coca-Cola, and they were able to basically ring fence all of the assets and the huge amount of work that they've done with Coke. And suddenly you can create a brain that not just produces the right IP, copyrighted IP friendly assets for Coca-Cola, but you can also get it to write ideas for campaigns. You can write copy, and it's all going to be having the right tone of voice. And it's going to be safe, and it's going to be pretty good. It's going to get you to sort of 80-90% of the work. And so that is something that is a tremendous value, because it means you can get more stuff out there in more countries, in more markets, in more channels, right? And that is what then develops into a sort of a product, and those products are then of course promoted. And I think certainly at the network agency level, if you're not promoting your AI investment, your AI capability, you're really going to fall behind, right? So you've seen WPP come out and talk sort of about these brains and sort of the 200 million that they're going to be investing from Capital Markets Day. Publicis, I think, just ahead of them, we're announced 300 million. I look at Omnicom, I look at Havas, I look at Dentsu, I look at all of those guys, and they're all pushing this stuff because they know it's an arms race, right? If they don't basically push that out there, and if they don't say they've got these capabilities, even if they're being built in the background, right, they're going to lose these very, very big clients. And so, that is absolutely core and central of the network agency. I imagine it's probably a little bit different in the smaller agencies, and certainly, my work with Spark and some of the customer interviews we've done, what I've seen is this, in the smaller agencies, they've sort of not quite sure how to promote that, because of course there's a difficult conversation about where AI is being used and how not. But Luke's the man to give you more on that.
Yeah, I think as a smaller studio, I think it's an interesting space to fill. I mean, as a competitive landscape, we're not going to take the account of Coke, right? Like we don't have and never have been at a scale that would be a conversation. But we may work with them on particular projects, and we do work and take work from significantly large global agencies for particular pieces of work. Now, obviously, there's a crossover of client there in the sense of what the client is looking for. And that is often a number of things, but often it's creative ambition, it's bravery, it's all of those things that clients want. They want something different than they have in-house, right? So if you're talking about AI in that scenario, we are promoting where we're using it and being transparent with where we're using it. I think that's the easiest way to go about it. Everyone's sort of nervous about saying we're using it. Most people are using it in their day-to-day life if they're aware of it or not, right? Like software has it built into things and it's engaging with them. For us, we're very clear. We don't use it in our strategic phase of work at all. That's completely ring-fenced. We don't use it in the creative idea stage of work. We are literally using it once an idea is created, once it actually is conceptually tested internally, we're using it to implement the actual outcome and go, okay, right, how do we bring all of these ideas to life through some AI tools? But that doesn't mean that we're not using standard or traditional methods of bespoke photography, your custom illustration, all the things that we're doing. It's just a slither of an addition. And I think that's where we need to, as an industry, talk about, okay, all of those skill sets are not gone. It's just another additional skill set. It's like the creation of the digital camera that added something of speed and process and opportunity to a creative process that was already film photography. Myself, obviously, I shoot some film, but I tend to shoot more digital because it enables me to squeeze it into my busy life. AI in some regards is doing a similar thing as a creative studio. We're sweating those assets completely and then going, okay, that creative concept works. Let's really turbocharge it with some creative visualizations And it enables, one of the best things obviously people know about is it enables you to communicate with clients who maybe aren't creatively minded, who can't see a vision. You know, there's people like that who are brilliant at what they do, but when you're trying to explain a concept, that's something their brain struggles to deal with. So having the tools to go, this is how it could look, enables creative studios to go and gain buy-in to do things that were bigger and better than they could have done before. So talking about that, we're open about, like with the Prepped case study, actually talking to the market and going, this is where we're using it for this specific reason, for this value case. This makes perfect sense. But I think the nervousness comes that obviously we have had people, designers who are commenting on that piece of work going, I love it, but you're going to, people are going to lose their jobs and all of that kind of negative connotation to the AI conversation. And, and unfortunately, we need to have that as an industry. There is going to need to be a progression of career paths to enable this software to be embedded. It's no different than when I'm sure Ben was talking about the digital transformation, senior leaders becoming actually digital first leaders. That was the same process of, we're in an arms race of an industry and people need to keep up. And if you're not evolving and progressing yourself and looking at your career ahead, career paths change. That's just the reality that AI has brought forward. We can kind of say, oh, it isn't going to happen, but unfortunately it is. Things are going to change.
Yeah. And actually, I was about to start bringing us to a close, but I really think we should talk about that a little bit as well, because I wanted to get to it, but we've been having really good conversations on the other aspects. But yeah, I mean, Luke, I think you strongly feel, and I think you're right, is that the skills required are going to evolve over time, as they always have done over the last, in all our careers as well. The skills that are required have evolved. What do you think this means for creative teams, or more broadly, creative agency teams?
I think that the interesting thing for creative agencies and creative agency leaders is how good are creative, particularly at smaller scale, where you don't have maybe HR directors, training leaders, you don't have the infrastructure of a large corporation. How does a creative leader have the skill sets to pivot from how are we delivering the best creative to what is the career path of my team I have now and what is the shape of my business in 5 years' time? That's the biggest headache for the creative leaders at the moment, to forward plan and to look at their own businesses and the business of our industry a little bit more devoid of emotion and go, does this work for me long term? How does this work? How do we fit with clients? For us at United Us, we are and have been investing a significant amount in our training and development programs. We're just about to have a new piece of software and engagement come online that helps team members who we feel are particularly at risk of changing work landscapes, to look with them and work with them to go, okay, where are your skill sets valuable? How do we transfer your skill sets? What can we train you onto? Because as Ben started right at the top, people aren't going to want to pay for certain parts of the creative industry because, let's be frank, AI will be able to do that quicker and faster. There will be sections of our industry that sit in that bracket, but there will be a plethora of things that AI cannot or will not, or clients don't want them to do. And hopefully, we've had a bit of a conversation in the past around the fact that hopefully AI enables us to progress back to an industry where you're paid to think, to create yourself, to have time, to build relationships that are meaningful, and to find the human elements of client work. So, we as a collective industry, and my belief, and the partners at United Us, is that we have to be a vocal voice in trying to transition the understanding of what creative agencies do for clients to one of a value and time one, not an output focused conversation, which is what had happened over the last sort of 10, 15 years. It was statement of works and how many outputs and how many videos. That's not going to last, or we're all going to race to the bottom, which none of us want to do. So how do we move that conversation? Go on, Ben, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add some perspective, in the big agencies, right? And so the big agencies, the business model for years and years and years has been lots of junior staff, as cheap as possible, You try to reduce the amount of senior staff because they're expensive, and so you have these guys leading these teams, but ultimately the junior staff are trying to do a lot of the sort of donkey work. And that's because, particularly in some areas, and I'm thinking specifically around sort of media campaigns and all that thing, there is a lot of manual work and there's a lot of capability. This is just fundamentally going to change that, right? We are in a position where 2 to 3 years' time, it's very, very likely that we will have a combination of teams that are sort of humans and also a bunch of agents and automations. And so who is looking after those? Who are the humans in the loop that are looking after those automations and those agents, right? Because they can do a much better work and they can also do it faster and they can do it 24/7. And so the HR teams, the people teams, they really need to start thinking about that transition, because actually, back to your point around using the ability to be able to think again, that also means you can have different profiles and different people in the business, right? So that person who is much more relationship heavy with the client, that can think through strategy with the client, and then they can say, right, we'll go and put it into the process. The process is going to deliver that for you. We have the best process in the agency world because we've spent a lot of time designing it, making sure it does things effectively, efficiently. And so all that marketing transformation piece, it's a bit that I'm really heavily involved in at the moment, is just going to shake things up. And if you're not preparing for that, I do worry, because I think that is, the writing is on the wall there, and that is absolutely where it's going to be going.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think in networked agencies, it's a real opportunity for HR leaders to really take a lead on this in the leadership team and really be very proactive. But I think in independent agencies, it's very much a leadership team strategy issue, like top of mind. Right, so we've only got a couple of minutes left. So I'm just going to ask both of you, what would be your couple of top tips for agencies that are just starting to talk about AI in their client relationships? What would you advise them?
Don't suggest anything to a client that you haven't absolutely trialed to the nth degree and you are 100% confident that it provides value. I think it's easy to just want to jump into this conversation and be like, yeah, we're using it. But unless you can really, would you do that with another part of your business? No, you would make sure that you have the checks and the balances covered. And, and for us, there was a long period of trial and error internally before we at any point with the prep stuff decided, right, this is the one. And there is particular projects as well that are gonna come into your studio where you're gonna go, this is one where it benefits. Let's lean into one where it adds value. Don't shoehorn it into something that it doesn't.
Brilliant. Yeah, I would just build on that, which is, if there is something that is going to drive value, there's nothing more exciting than bring that to your client, because you can basically say, look, we've been working on this. This is now working. We know it's going to deliver value for you, either for better effectiveness, or it's going to cut some efficiency out of things. If you don't have that, to Luke's point, then I think the really important thing is what we said all along. It's openness, transparency. Hey, got an idea. We want to work on this together. You'd be the first client to work with us on this proof of concept. It could go wrong, right? But as long as you're up for it, there could be some nice rewards at the end of the day. And then, of course, the real carrot is that the client then gets the PR out of that in the press. So I think, just open and honest relationship, to what Luke said earlier. That's just always been sort of the most important thing between the agency-client relationship. And I think it will continue.
Yeah. The only other last thing I would add, because I know we're going to run out of time, is I think agency leaders need to look at their team in a different way. You need to look at the people that maybe added the most value, in loose inverted commas, to a client are potentially not the people that added the most value in the future. And you need to be able to look at your previously. You need to be able to look at your team as a human and a skill set level and go, okay, who is going to provide value in the future? Because actually, it could be the person that knows the client the most is the person that can realize the most actual value through an AI tool, rather than a person that traditionally would have been doing something that looked incredible or engaged someone through your thing. Value is going to change. And I think that's one of the challenges / opportunities for everyone in the creative industry, everyone, all tiers of the business, to look at this and go, there is huge opportunity if you're willing to take the time and be brave with what you're doing with it.
That's a really good challenge to us all. Brilliant. And the only other two things that we've talked that really jumped out at me through our conversation, just to add, were the really interesting, very big differences between networked and independent agencies in this. Also, the importance of being super clear about what your AI approach is to enable you to be transparent, like Ben was talking about. And also that interestingly, the clients aren't actually asking that much yet, but I think we need to expect a lot more in 2025 and this is our opportunity to be prepared for that and get ourselves ready. So Luke and Ben, thank you so much. That has been an incredibly insightful and valuable to so many of us conversation. Thank you. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. This webinar will stay on LinkedIn under our events page, under our events listing on the Spark page. In case you didn't get time to make any notes or want to rewatch or send it to colleagues, it will stay there. Also, I'm just going to share a couple of ways to keep in touch. I haven't done this before, so bear with me. I'm going to try and present a couple of slides. Oh, it's worked. Great. Okay, so at Spark, we run workshops to activate AI in your agency across leadership, creative, strategy, and as a whole team. If you want some more information about that, give that barcode a scan. And then if you would just like to stay in touch and cut through all the AI hype, anyone that spends much time on LinkedIn will see that there is a lot of AI hype at the moment. And you just want to know the stuff that matters for creative agencies. We do a free newsletter every fortnight that rounds up all of that. So feel free to sign up and use that QR code there. Let me just try and unshare that. Hang on. I'm not actually sure how to unshare it, so we might have to leave. Oh no, hang on, I've done it. There we go. Well, that leaves me just to say thank you again. We've got one more webinar coming up this year, and that's going to be on how to use AI for super smooth agency operations. That's on the 21st of November. Keep an eye out for that. It's on our events on LinkedIn, like this one. We'd love to see you there. And okay, one last thank you to Ben and Luke. Thanks so much.
Pleasure.
See you all soon.
It was great. Thank you.
Bye.